Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. A book launched today called Midnight's Furies about partition and the first year after independence reveals little known but fascinating truths about Jawaharlal Nehru and his love life, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and his wife, both Lord and Lady Mountbatten, the accession of Kashmir, and how India and Pakistan's borders on the west were drawn. For some, the book will prove controversial, and for many, possibly discomforting. In part 2, we present an exclusive interview with the author Nisith Hajari, who reveals many of his book's secrets. But first, the historic Iran nuclear deal. Few will doubt its significance, but what will be its precise impact on the Middle East, on the oil market, and on India? And does it create challenges, or does it only offer opportunities? With me to shed light is India's former ambassador to Iran, K.C. Singh, and one of India's foremost foreign policy analysts, the author of Modi's World, Expanding India's Sphere of Influence, C. Raja Mohan. Mr. K.C. Singh, let's start with the deal itself before we ask what it means for the Middle East and for India. Do you believe this is a win-win situation? As the Iranian foreign minister claimed, will it open a new chapter of hope?
It depends after the fine print has been read and if the implementation is as per the understandings. Yes, but the past history of people who have done deals with Iran is that many times there would be their interpretation which may be at variance with the interpretation of the people they have engaged. That time will tell, because Iran is a very complex system and there will be multiple pressures there and balancing between revolutionary guards, the clerical element, the supreme leader playing the referee between them. So implementation is critical.
Okay. Now the deal, Professor Rajabor, has to clear the US Congress, and there President Obama faces adverse Republican majorities. How difficult will that be? Or does the fact that he's already said he's going to veto it if it's stopped assure that clearance will happen?
I think the Republicans are quite clearly opposed to it. Then you have the Friends of Israel in Washington. They too are going to lobby against the deal. But I think the President Obama, in fact, in his television address yesterday made a very important point. Look, he's presenting either do the deal or you go to war. Moment you pose it as a choice, that is, not having a deal means Iran will be under no obligation to restrain its nuclear program, and that will inevitably lead to a war. That, I think, is a powerful argument. My sense is there is popular support for that argument, while whatever might be the skepticism about Iran. So I think he has a good chance of winning this argument, because my sense is there will be significant political support for him.
Now, Mr. K.C. Singh, the deal has two great opponents in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Israel. Let's take up Saudi Arabia first. How do you believe the Saudis will react? And secondly, do you accept the argument that they could seek a closer alliance with Pakistan because they'll be concerned about Iran's developing nuclear capabilities? And if that happens, that clearly would be a cause of concern for us.
You know, none of the old alliances and plates are constant any longer. Many of these plates have moved. Saudis, yes, traditionally have been part of the two-pillar policy of US to stabilize the Gulf. First one used to be the Shah, which got knocked out in '79. But I think US has come to a realization that to geostrategically invest Asia, which means to stabilize Syria, constrain ISIS, Saudi Arabia is no longer an asset. Saudi Arabia is a problem, and Iran is an asset and is needed. Therefore, Saudi Arabia's bargaining positions got considerably weakened. In any case, US dependence on the Gulf oil is no longer there to the extent it used to be there, or maybe none at all. And President Obama, in any case, has had the GCC leaders over in Washington, assuaged their fears, and told them that we'll take care of your security, short of actually underwriting with an alliance the security like they've done in case of Japan, etc. They would give all possible help to reassure the GCC members.
Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel has said, and I'm quoting him, that this is a mistake of historic proportions. His deputy foreign minister says that Israel will use all means to try and stop the agreement being ratified. How far do you think Israel will go? Because it does have enormous support in Congress, particularly with the Republicans. Or do you read this reaction just as initial anger and possibly bluster?
No, I think Netanyahu has been campaigning against the deal for quite some time. And in fact, the relationship between Netanyahu and Obama is pretty bad. because there have been, insults, there have been, really, I think, trying to insult the American president. I mean, I think that went down quite badly in the US as well. So I think they'll go all out. I mean, I have no doubt. But I think, given the gravity of the issue involved, my sense is the US will still look after its own interests while reassuring Israel, just as Ambassador K.C. Singh was saying, you need to reassure your Gulf allies. I think Obama will go out of the way to give enough reassurance to the Israelis. But I think Netanyahu's position, of course, is not the only position in Israel. So my sense is there will be a battle, but I think the president will prevail over Netanyahu's opposition.
Okay, let's come, Professor Rajamohan, to what this deal means for India. First of all, not only will the international oil price come down, and perhaps fairly substantially over the next couple of years as increasing quantities of Iranian oil come on the market, but for India, to the extent to which it chooses now to step up imports from Iran, the cost of doing so will also come down, both in terms of insurance and in terms of shipping. So if India now starts taking increasing quantities of oil from Iran, and it has come down to a very minimal percentage, would that be a substantial gain?
Look, I think, the more the merrier. I mean, I think the greater the number of sources, and Iran is so close to us physically, that I think that is absolutely quite easy to see. But I think the problem is not at the oil level, because the glut in the oil market is going to continue if Iran comes in. That is a net benefit. But I think the problem will be, look, while we expand our relationship with Iran, our current equities are largely with the Arab Gulf.
Can I stop you there? I'll come to that in a moment's time. I'm very keen to take that up. But let's stick for a moment to oil and the possibility of gas. Mr. K.C. Singh, something that India explored a couple of years ago was the Iran-Pakistan-India gas pipeline. And then because of sanctions and also because of the unreliability of the Pakistani intervening factor, we moved away. Now that the sanctions on Iran are being lifted, do you think that's another possibility? Do you think it's a reality?
I think gas is the future of gas via pipelines. We have to take a very careful look at. In any case, if you have to buy Iranian gas, today technologies are available where you can bring a subsea pipeline, a shallow water pipeline or a deep water pipeline. But the problem was not just Pakistan. Problem was also negotiating with Iran, because very often they mix up strategic issues with commercial ones. So they will go from one to the other, and that is how the price of gas at that point could not be determined. And what they were going to sell to us was lean gas, which could only be used for power generation. And the price at that stage was really way above the economics of it.
So the whole thing depends critically upon Iran coming to a more realistic price, and us in India still feeling that this is a good choice for us. Would you accept that?
It also depends on what shale gas does to the global gas market, what other sources of supply are. For instance, we are being told that TAPI is being revived, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, which has then two complex countries in a way, not just one, which is Afghanistan and Pakistan. But the Iranians will not want that. Iranians, for instance, simplistic solutions have been given that Govada will give us all kinds of access to Central Asia. But Iranians will give you access, but only to the extent their own oil and gas market is not affected.
One other quick question before I come to Professor Rajamohan and talk about how this changes India's relationship that's been developing in the last decade with the Gulf. The question I want to put to you, Mr. K.C. Singh, is this. What impact will this have on Indian exports to Iran? In the last 2 years, they've gone up fairly substantially. But now that Iran's markets will be open to Europe and America, perhaps with preferential treatment given to the Russians and the Chinese, could we find our exports to Iran being squeezed?
You see, absolutely correct, because there will be pent-up demand in that market for European goods, for other goods. For Chinese, in any case, have taken up a lot of space, vacated by everyone, vacated even in the oil and gas by us, by Japanese. So one is a question of pushing the Chinese back, which won't be easy. And the second one is, of course, the Europeans coming in and rest of the world coming in. So it's now level playing field, and we are not going to find it that easy.
Let's come to the political dimension of this Iran deal and what it does for India. As you were pointing out, in the last decade, India has developed a lot of equities with the Gulf, with Saudi Arabia, and with Israel. Let's not forget that. And our foreign minister is due to go to Israel soon. The Prime Minister will be visiting Tel Aviv shortly thereafter. What impact will this have now on our relationship with the Gulf, with the Saudis, with Israel?
Because of the Iranian isolation, and I think we had to necessarily focus on the Gulf Arabs. In any case, our engagement with the Gulf Arabs has increased not just in the last 10 years, but goes back to 79 when the Islamic Republic was founded in Iran. Now, I think the challenge for India would be this, that as Iran's weight in the region grows, as Iran's influence in the region grows, we need to navigate the contradictions between Iran and the Saudi Arabia on the one hand, and the complexity that's going to emerge within the GCC itself. The problem there has been, we've not engaged the region enough. Take Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, 10 years, traveled to the region barely 4 times, 2 of which for non-aligned summits. Here was this region so important for us, but yet the political energy that Delhi has devoted has been abysmal. And now this government in the first year, of course, the PM has not gone there, but hopefully he will begin to go there. So I think while there is a fascination for Israel in this government, that doesn't take away the weight of the Arab relationship.
Do you think this government, and do you think our Foreign Office in particular, has the expertise to handle this joint challenge of building a relationship with Iran, which we have been nurturing for a long time, at the same time is not spoiling what we've created with the Arab world?
No, I think, no major power in the Middle East does only one country. I think it's only our domestic ideological arguments that have forced this, unnecessary divide. If you're a smart nation, you will engage all of them at the same time and manage the contradictions.
In other words, we need to be smarter.
And grow up.
And grow up.
Yeah.
Mr. K.C. Singh, what about the burgeoning relationship with Israel? Our Prime Minister has invested a lot of his personal time in developing a relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu. The Foreign Minister is going there shortly. He himself will be going there thereafter. Clearly, Israel is a relationship we want to nurture and grow. But now, Israel's taken a very strong stand against the Iran nuclear deal. And if our trade with Iran, if our oil purchases from Iran were to grow, could that complicate the relationship with Israel? Or will Tel Aviv and Delhi be able to keep the two apart?
Look, Israel will maintain that position just to keep the pressure on all those who are dealing with Iran. But Israel's lived with it in the past, because the closest relationship that we had with Iran was between 2001 and 2003, when Prime Minister Vajpayee went there, and then their president came here, Khatami came here, and we had a Tehran declaration and a Delhi declaration. And don't forget, President Khatami was a guest at the Republic Day during that visit. We've also subsequently had the Saudi Arabian king come here. So we played both sides. I think a bit of a problem that UPA had, which I fortunately didn't have to encounter when I was ambassador in Abu Dhabi, because I had an NDA government in Delhi, that they tended to let Kerala guide their policy to the Gulf, and that I don't think is either liked by the Gulf ruling families. They want to be treated directly by the government of India as strategic entities, and this, I believe, Prime Minister may be visiting some of those countries, or certainly he should be visiting some of those countries before he goes to Israel.
So in a nutshell, you're much more confident than Professor Raja Mohan that the smartness that's needed to handle both the Gulf, Israel and Iran at the same time exists and will be used to the hilt. Very quickly.
Absolutely, it's ultimately a political decision how you play it. Foreign Office is only an adjunct to that. You cannot play a game outside what the political leadership wants. But if the Prime Minister reaches out, say Saudi Arabia, UAE, we haven't had a Prime Minister go there since Mrs. Indira Gandhi. We've had presidential visits. If you reach out to these two major countries and then you reach out to Israel, I think they're used to it. They're very close friends of US, and they know the US relationship with Israel. They realize, after all, they have very close relationship with Pakistan. And we live with that.
Very quickly, Professor Raja Mohan, and you really have to answer me in 10 seconds. How much does this add to President Obama's legacy? After all, just a few weeks or months ago, he secured full relationship with Cuba. Now he's done this historic deal with Iran. Has he added to the Obama legacy fairly substantially?
Absolutely, and I think if the implementation goes through right, as Ambassador K.C. Singh pointed out, this can be of the scale that Nixon goes to China. That you normalize relationship with a country that has been hostile to you so long, and in the consequence fundamentally alter the geopolitics of the Middle East.
So far from being a lame duck because he's lost out to the Congress where the Republicans have the majority, he's actually established himself as a very credible president in his last year and a half.
I think he's going to go out on a great high.
He's going to go out on a great high. All right, my thanks to you for joining me. My thanks also to Mr.